Welcome back to KotlinBytes. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to create a short link application using Spring Boot and Kotlin. In this example, you can see that we can create short links, and we can then apply those short links, and it redirects, just like short links should. All right, let's get started. Okay, so for this application, I'm going to be using Heroku. I'm going to be using MongoDB for the database. And for this application, I'll be using the MongoDB cloud. One thing to note for the MongoDB cloud is that you should open up all IP addresses. Otherwise, you may run into some trouble. I know it's not a great practice, but for at least your initial testing, you can do this. I'm also going to be using the Spring Initializer to help set up the Spring Boot project. One thing to note here is that I'm using version 2.1.18. I believe versions after that don't support the REST API that I'll be showing you. Yeah, just something to keep in mind. And of course, I'm using Kotlin and a Gradle project. Okay, open up your project. You'll notice that we have one file here called fco application. We're going to add a new file. That's going to be our MainController. We'll annotate it. And within here, we're able to create our endpoints. We're going to create two endpoints. Our posting endpoint for creating a new short link. Then we're also going to create a get endpoint for retrieving the short link. The post mapping is going to accept two parameters, an alias and the original URL. And it's going to return a response entity. And for now, we're just going to return OK saved, because I'd like to make sure that this works first, and then we'll come back and implement the details. And here for the get mapping, we're going to pass in a path variable called alias. So eventually it's going to be fco.cc / whatever the alias is, or localhost / your alias. So one parameter for the alias, and the second parameter is going to be our request, which is an HTTP servlet request. This is going to be used for retrieving the domain name programmatically. This will come in useful later. And for now, I'm just going to redirect every response to google.com. Okay, let's test what we have here. To do so, press the play button on the main application. And as you can see, we have a bit of an issue. We get an error whenever we go to localhost, but if we add a path to our domain, you'll see that it redirects to Google. So that is working correctly, but let's also test our post endpoint. To do so, I'm going to use something called Postman. Postman is an incredibly powerful tool for testing REST APIs. So I'm going to set this to post. Our URL is localhost 8080 / URLs, and I'm going to add our body here. And yeah, it looks like it's working. I'm going to modify our saved response just a little bit to give us more clarity. And yeah, saved youtube.com as test. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to create a home page. The home page is going to be just a plain HTML document. And I'm going to add this to our static resource folder. I'll be using Bootstrap just to accelerate some things. Here's a time lapse of me coding up this simple homepage website. Okay, if we test this, you notice that we only go to google.com. no matter what we do, we just go to localhost, it redirects us. And the reason why is because it looks like our git mapping here with our alias is causing some conflicts, making it impossible for us to go to our index. Just to verify this, I'm going to change Google to apple.com just to verify that there's not another error happening. And sure enough, yeah, that's what's causing it. So to fix this, we're going to have to add a regular expression to our git mapping alias. And what we need here is just to verify that there is a path. And to do so, we can use a regular expression to verify that at least one character has been written here, and more specifically, either an alphabetic character or a numeric character. There we go. And now localhost works as expected, and a path also works. Great. Now the application.properties file should be ignored by Git. You should never commit it because this is going to have some of your private information regarding keys. But you can keep it local for local testing. I want to show you how to set these properties up in Heroku so you can save it and push it with Git. Okay, we're going to set up our database now for our URL mappings. And so we're going to create a URL mapping model. We're going to annotate it as a document, and we're going to set the collection to URLs. That's just the table name. And it's going to have, of course, the alias and the original URL. We'll then also create a URL mapping repository. And that's going to extend a Mongo repository. And we're going to give it one function. Something that's very nice about Mongo repositories in Spring Boot is that it uses the function name to query. So we're going to find by the alias. The ID is actually automatically generated, so we're just going to use the alias. Okay, we're going to inject our URLs repo in here using AutoWired. This is very useful and is provided by Spring Boot for free. You don't have to create an instance of a URL repo, it'll automatically be injected. For our post mapping, we're going to simply call URLs repo.save and create a new object. And just so that we're not being completely unsafe, we're going to verify that the alias has not been used previously. And for our git mapping, we're actually just going to call URLs repo.find alias. We're going to find the first item in that list. It's going to return a list, but we're going to just pull the first item. There should only be one item. And we're going to use the original URL that's on that found object. Now, of course, if there's no objects with this alias, we want it to redirect to the index. And to do so, I'm going to use this helper function that I've created. It's an extension function upon HTTP servlet request called base URL. Okay, let's test it. So I want to post my YouTube channel here and then create an alias of KotlinByte. And I'll submit it. And it looks like it was saved successfully. So let's add that to the URL. KotlinBytes. There we go. That worked. Once you upload this application to Heroku, you'll have to add those environmental variables for MongoDB. To do that, in the project settings, you can add configuration variables and just add them there. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching, you guys. If you have any project ideas, please leave them in the comments below, and have a great day.